please share the afterglow moment between Joe and Fritz that you once mentioned. I need it, for reasons. Okay, so this is in Little Man, chapter Goldilocks. Quote, we give them kindly spirit that shines through the simplest demeanor, making it courteous and cordial, like you, my dear old boy. This is Joe speaking to Fritz. Tut, we will not compliment, for if I begin you will run away, and I have a wish to enjoy this happy half an hour to the end. What have they been doing for half an hour? Yet Mr. Bear looked pleased with the compliment, for it was true, and Mrs. Joe felt that she had received the best her husband could give her by saying that he found his truest rest and happiness in her society. Okay, it depends on the edition, but this one that I have, and I have this British edition from the 50s, I think. It says that Friedrich is laying on the couch, Joe next to him after a long sweaty day in the garden. And then in my Finnish version, my Finnish translation, Joe is going through Friedrich's hair with her hand. Like, you can't blame me thinking that this might have been an afterglow scene. And it would have not been that unusual for Louisa May Alcott because there is the sex scene in the actual Little Woman. All the conversations in Little Man between Joe and Fritz are very warm and intimate, and it kind of reminds me of that notion of Louisa and Henry having a telepathic connection, and he also liked to work sweaty in the garden. Joe and Fritz, they have these very playful conversations, and they tease each other in most adorable ways. And what is funny about it, when they tease each other in the book, they're really just giving each other compliments. And what I love about this is the narrator says how Joe feels that the place next to Friedrich is the best place in the world, and they have the specific time each day that they spend with one another. And he also wants her to be close to him physically and emotionally. And in Little Woman, there is the sex scene between Meg and John, which is referred to as, quote, a moment of bliss. And here we have, quote, truest rest and happiness. It's quite suggestive. It can be foreplay. Louisa got into a bit of a trouble with Little Woman Part 2. It was considered too much of an adult novel, and there were some people and organizations who even wanted to ban it because of, quote, moment of bliss and things like that. Joe's sexual awakening with Fritz. And most readers now don't even pay attention to these details, which I blame the adaptations, but I think it's actually pretty amazing. I did find this fun blog post how words like moment of bliss and truest bliss and happiness were used as euphemisms. Okay, so this is from Squeaking Pips. Quote, 19th century people also used euphemisms for sex and sexual activity. Contrary to 19th century stereotypes, Maggie clearly enjoys her sexual relationship with Eli. However, propriety demands that she refrain from being too graphic when she speaks about it or when she writes in her journal. In A Time to Heal, she uses an alternate term, quote, free, when writing about sexual activity in her journal, and yet it's clear what she is referring to. Quote, I was taught the value of modesty, journal, but having been married twice, I also learned the value of being free with one's husband. Today Eli and I were free by the little bod on our property. In the same journal entry, she also used the word pleasant and the phrase enjoy each other to indicate sexual activity. Quote, while it would not be prudent to give details of our afternoon, allow me to say that it was quite pleasant. The sun was warm, and we tried quickly after our swim. Then we enjoyed each other's company while the birds called sweetly and the cicadas were in the trees. Here's the Joe and Friedrich kissing scene from Little Man. I read Little Man again just a few months ago, and I had not noticed this before. So this happens after Dan has run away from Plumfield, and then he comes back. So Dan is Joe's favorite student in Little Man. He's her wild child. Joe finds Dan from the barn, and then she goes and tells Fritz about it. Quote, I hadn't the heart to scold him, and just took him in like a poor little black sheep come back to the fold. I may keep him, Fritz, can I? Of course you may. This proves to me that we have a hold on the boy's heart, and I would no more send him away now than I would my own Rob. Dan heard a soft little sound as if Mrs. Joe thanked her husband without words. Soft little sound as if Mrs. Bear thanked her husband without words. Well, that's euphemism for kissing. That was Little Man chapter Home Again, Louisa May Alcott, 1871. So next time when you come across people who say that, oh, Joe was never into Friedrich, feel free to quote these scenes from the actual novel and the book series.
Hello, friends. It is Niina from the Little Woman podcast. Just to let you all know that the Little Woman podcast episode transcripts are now available as books. You can find them as paperbacks and ebooks. They are wonderful reading for all the fans of Louisa May Alcott. You can find all the links from the description.
Anon asks, maybe I am wrong, but I thought I remember hearing from your podcast or read in your blog that in one of the sequels of Little Woman that the boys interrupt Joe and Friedrich from almost getting it on. If that is true, could you share that passage, please? Of course I can. It is in Joe's Boys, chapter 2. Oh, Fritz, I am so delighted about Emo, and if you approve about France also. Did you know that me love? Is it a wise match? Asked Miss Joe, handing him her cup of tea as if she welcomed her refuge in joy as well as sorrow. It all goes well. I saw the Mädchen when I went over to Place France. A child then, but most sweet and charming. Plumenthal is satisfied, I think, and the boy will be happy. He is too German to be content away from Waterland, so we shall have him as a link between the new and the old, and that pleases me much. And Emil, he's to be second mate next voyage. Isn't that fine? I'm so happy that both of your boys have done well. You gave up so much for them and their mother. You make light of it, dear, but I never forget it, said Joe with her hand in his as sentimentally as if she was a girl again, and her Fritz had come wooing. He laughed his cheery laugh and whispered behind her fan, if I had not come to America for poor lads, I never should have found my Joe. The hard times are very sweet now, and I bless God for all I seem to lose because I gained the blessing of my life. Spooning, spooning, here's an awful flirtation on the sly, cried Teddy, peering over the fan. Just at that interesting moment, much to his mother's confusion and his father's amusement, for the professor never was ashamed of the fact that he still considered his wife the dearest woman in the world. Rob promptly attracted his brother from one window to see him skip at the other, while Mrs. Joe shut her fan and held it ready to rap her unruly boy's knuckles if he came near her again. Joe and Friedrich are the cutest. There are quite a few scenes in Joe's Boys where they are making out and kissing. And it's interesting because in the 19th century it wasn't considered appropriate to kiss or hold hands in public. But it seems to be like a theme with Joe and Friedrich under the umbrella chapter. They're kissing in the middle of a street. The narrator even says that, oh, Joe would have kissed him, even if the birds on the fence would have been people. Hi, do you know who inspired Cacto Friedrich Bear? Thank you. I do know, and I have many episodes about it. Friedrich is a mixed character who was inspired by a lot of people who were influential in Lucy's life and many men who she admired, like Henry David Thoreau, Waldo Emerson, Goethe, and Charles Follen. There are some Alcott scholars who have done specific studies on Friedrich's character, and some of my favorites are Singing Mignon's Song by Christine Doyle, which is all about Louisa May Alcott's obsession with Germany and German culture. Then Joe marries Goethe, Professor Bear as the Goethean Ideal by Megan Ahmed, and Louisa May Alcott's Cosmopolitan Project by Laura Dessel Walls. I'm always happy to share my research if you want to read some of these studies. Drop me a note. I collect academic studies about Friedrich's origins and Laurie's origins. Did Louisa May Alcott have a love affair with Henry David Thoreau? It's possible. I mean, When you read Louisa's journals, there are some censored parts when it comes to Henry. When I have read Henry Thoreau's biographies and his letters, he very often censors the name of his love interests. This is what the narrator says in Little Woman. Quote, "Don't laugh at the spinsters, dear girls, for often very tender, tragic romances are hidden away in the hearts that beat so quietly under the sober gowns, and many silent sacrifices of youth, health, ambition, love itself, make the faded faces beautiful in God's sight." Tragic romances hidden away in the hearts of the spinster. She literally admits having romances and falling in love, and she was in love with him, and his death hit her heart. There's this very interesting part that I read about Henry's funerals, that after he died, and then Emerson kept a speech in the funeral, and he was somewhat critical about Henry. Louisa got very mad that he was criticizing him. Sometimes people complain that Friedrich in Little Woman, he's written to be too perfect. He's written to be a flawless character. I don't think he's flawless, because nobody is, but I think that admiration and love that Louis had for Henry, you can see that in the way Jo loves Friedrich, and that in her eyes, his flaws are what makes him so great. Or the things that other people see as flaws are what makes him so great in her eyes.